Renee went to feed the dogs the other night and she asked if I'd seen the dogs bowl. I said, no, I didn't know they could play cricket.
I don't actually remember that joke, Rhys.
Me neither, which made it actually funny.
It did. That was a great joke.
Bad as each other.
My 12-year-old daughter tells me jokes sometimes because, she gets the whole dad joke thing and she tries to help me with my repertoire. Sometimes they're really good and sometimes they're terrible, but I have to laugh because I don't want to crush her soul.
You've got to encourage it. Renee does that too. She's come a long way over the years. Chop some funnies out.
I often get told I've lived with him for too long.
Yeah. And it is a skill that you develop as your children grow, as we like to make them grown.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a bit the same. Warwick, you told me a very funny joke earlier and we never let you tell jokes. So I think maybe today we should break tradition.
Well, it's my moment to shine, Nick, although I'm going to get so much podcast hate over this, I'm sure.
No.
Well, so we got a lot of chooks here, but you guys might not know this. Why do chicken coops have 2 doors?
Oh, don't know.
Not sure.
Because if they had 4 doors, they'd be chicken sedans.
Yeah,
That's like a bait and switch, that one.
That was all right. I might use that one, actually.
that straight away was impressive, I feel.
I know that I could tell that to my children. They'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
SUV?
I don't get it. What
Yeah.
that got to do with a car?
I had a coop myself, so I feel like that joke was that set me up for success.
Absolutely.
That.
Oh. All right. Well, we are here to talk a bit about history. And before we hit record, we were delving into what is our own different perspectives on history. You guys are a bit younger than Coxie and I, which is not hard. Most people are younger than Coxie and I. We are joined here by Rhys and Renee, or Lils and Renee, from Functional Air. So you guys are fabulous tradiepreneur members, business owners, parents, burning all sorts of candles at both ends in business. And this is a real tradie story. We haven't done one of these for a while, but we love to get some of our awesome tradiepreneurs onto the podcast just to share their story. And I think sometimes in terms of coaching and teaching, it's way more impactful and helpful for people to hear real stories from people who are doing the stuff than it is to hear mum and dad just say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. But when someone else is actually doing it, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We're a pleasure to be here.
And I think that's a first. We've had a guest open the show with a joke.
Second, we did one earlier this week that I think dropped today.
I feel to be part of the crew.
You've been inducted.
I think it goes with the tradiepreneur cred. You need to be able to bust out a mum joke or a dad joke at some point so that, mix it with the crew.
Yeah. Funds and plenty. They're definitely encouraged in the community.
I wanted to highlight that I think there's an added benefit today for you, Rhys and Renee, and that is it's a little bit like putting together an awards submission. It's not often that we stop and we think and look back over where we've come from. And my hope is whenever we have any of our guests on, they have the opportunity to look over their own journey as we talk through it today. So I'd be really pleased to check back in with you guys to see how you feel about it when we get to the end of the episode.
Yeah, definitely.
Righto, you ready for the interrogation?
Ready.
Let's go.
Nothing unusual was.
Come on, we're supposed to be telling our listeners how awesome it is to be a trader.
It's just hard truths. That's all it is.
So guys, give our listeners a bit of background or, your backstory. Like obviously it started with your mums and all that sort of stuff. But how did you come to be sitting here today as business owners, parents, tradiepreneurs? Take us back to the start.
So I'm Rhys. As Nick was mentioned, owner and director of Functional Air Queensland. We're an air conditioning company based in North Brisbane, looking after everything air conditioning from new build, light commercial, residential stuff. I've been in the industry now 15 years. Started my time close to Waz's home there in little old Tasmania. Flew the coop, thankfully, and got out while I could, and moved to sunny Brisbane. And yeah, I'm a dad to two beautiful little girls, a husband, sometimes another child to Renee, and that's pretty much
No comment.
Renee, how did you guys meet? And Rhys, were you in your own business when you guys met?
So we met actually in Mount Isa. So I was teaching in Mount Isa, and Rhys was in the mines out there from Tassie. So he came from Tassie all the way into Mount Isa. And we
really very similar temperature.
And so he was in the local AFL team, and I was in the local netball team. And
I pestered her until she got with me, basically.
That's a very similar story to another couple of members of ours in a very similar position. That's very cute. So, Rhys, at the time you were doing FIFO work?
No, so I lived there. So I left Tasmania with 3 bags, 2 bags of clothes, 1 bag of clothes and 2 bags of tools. And then I left with a fiance and, all the rest of the stuff. I ended up leaving. But no, so I went up there. I lived in Mount Isa and was working in town. And obviously, that's where I met Renee. She lived in Mount Isa as well, working at one of the local schools.
How did you come to Mount Isa as your choice? Like, that's such a vastly different everything.
I think I'm very, as you guys would know, obviously knowing this a bit now, I'm very much a keen person. I like to try new things. I'm very aspirational, I guess you would say. And I always wanted to have a crack at something else. All I ever knew was Tasmania. I lived there for 21, 22 years, I think it was. So that's all I ever knew. And I wanted to go into the big bad world and try something different. I worked with a colleague in Tasmania who then moved to Mount Isa. And he mentioned that they might be looking for some tradies up there. So it's kind of the way it's all worked out. I definitely didn't go there thinking that I would meet the love of my life. I thought there might be some older minor gentlemen there, and that was all it was going to be there. So, it was much to my surprise. That's where I obviously met Renee.
That was very diplomatic, Rhys. I love it. Renee, how on earth did you come to be a Mount Isa?
So I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for nearly 13 years now. And back when I first finished my degree, you had to essentially go out and do placement. So much easier now. I feel like you can just get permanency in Brisbane, Sunshine Coast. But so I went out there and I got my permanency, and I had only planned on staying there for a few years. We ended up staying 4 after I met Rhys. So that's how I came to be in Mount Isa.
Thank goodness, because I wouldn't have met her in Brisbane. There's a lot more people here.
She would have had more choice, mate.
Definitely. Hey, mate, that's why I asked her to marry me. I wasn't silly. I love that.
Quick, before she goes back to the big smoke.
So, guys, did you start the business there and transfer it down, or did you start once you had moved and settled in Brisbane?
Yeah, so business was something that I always toyed, I always had in my mind. My parents were business owners. Renee's parents were actually business owners as well. So we have had experience, with family members and stuff like that being in business. It's something that I always considered. But we moved back from Mount Isa. I worked for companies on the tools and stuff like that, worked my way up and ended up in a management position towards the end of my time before, personal circumstances and health issues and stuff like that kind of pushed us more down the business path, the right place, right time kind of thing. And that's kind of how it started from there. And it's snowballed into what it is today, really. It's been a pretty quick transition, really, hasn't it? I guess you would say.
So I think in 2021, we had a 1-year-old. I had a recent heart condition. And then we just made the decision that we were going to need more flexibility in our lives.
We started a business to have more time.
But we thought, we need the flexibility, and Rhys has always kind of wanted to do this. Why not now? We may as well do it now. Life's too short.
It is too short. You're absolutely right. So it has been a pretty rapid transition from where you started to where you are now. So maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of where you're at now, and then we can go back to the beginning and talk about that transition. What does business look like for you guys today?
So we started in 21, so nearly 3 years in business now. We've got 7 staff. We've got 3 subcontractors on our books as well. We're always looking for more staff. But it's growing. We've got great client base. We've got different sectors of the business in different, sectors of the industry, through the new build to the real estate, residential stuff. I'm predominantly in the office now. However, with the labour shortages and stuff like that are in Queensland and probably Australia, really having to be more on the tills is kind of where we're at the moment. And then obviously with Renee teaching part-time and being in the business as much as she can, as well as mum life and house life and all the things that I have no idea about as well.
Thanks for being honest, Rhys.
Yeah, I love it. Renee, do you feel like you guys have that flexibility that you were looking for 3 years ago?
Yeah, I do. Not, I guess the dream flexibility, what you imagine, but I also didn't expect that to happen after 3 years. I knew we'll start it now. We have short-term flexibility with my appointments or, things that come up with the kids. And like we said before, I'm still teaching part-time. So, and I'm very passionate in my career. So Rhys is able to take, time and work from home if the girls are sick, rather than me having to take my few days off that I work a week off. So absolutely, we've already seen some flexibility, and I suspect that flexibility will morph and look different as the business grows and we're open for a longer period of time.
Pretty rapid growth. You kicked off the business, say, 3 years ago, and you got 7 staff and a bunch of subbies, and we don't have to talk about your numbers, but it's a pretty competitive industry up there in Brizzy. Aircon. There's a few players in the game. What do you think's been part of your ability to pick up so much work and grow so quickly?
I think my biggest thing is the business side of things. Obviously, as a tradie entering into it, you have no idea. You're good at your trade and you're confident with that, but the business side of things wasn't so much. For me, I guess my biggest strong point is probably my people skill, my relationships, networking. I would think that I'm a pretty shy person to an extent, but I feel confident when I'm talking about what I know, so I'm in a public setting and approaching people for clients and all those kind of things. That's kind of what's, I guess, and not stopping. There's a lot of phone calls. No, mate. Yep. But being consistent with that and following it up and being on top of it, that's probably the reason why we have the clients that we have now and probably have grown the speed that we have, is because of that consistency there and not just calling once and forgetting about it, just keeping on to it. Because like you said, there's a lot of competitors out there, and generally people have other relationships with other competitors when you're starting out. What sets you apart from the rest? Just give us an opportunity, and we were confident that we were able to show what we can do, and we did.
Yeah. I still remember when we first opened, and Rhys would just go into the bedroom. He's had a list, and he would write a list of 50 clients down that he was cold calling, and he would just cold call. And I think, he's so strong at being positive and a real go-getter. He's all in. He wasn't, half in, or he knew that he wanted to grow the company. He didn't just want to be, a sole trader. He knew where he envisioned the company going, and he had big goals and big dreams.
Rhys, I find a lot of, particularly young people, and this is a bit stereotypical, but just go with me here, find it really challenging to cold call. It's not an easy thing to do. And there's a few reasons for that. It's not comfortable to be told no and then have to back it up. So what I'd really like to understand from you is, how did you find that consistency with being able to handle the rejection and keep pushing forward and making sure that you followed up time and time again?
I mean, you think back to when a telemarketer calls, how many times did people try to sell you things on the phone and you're just like, no, mate. And I've been guilty of it too. I think now probably having a business and having been through that, I give them a bit more time. Now I'm like, okay, thanks, mate. I'm not actually interested, I'm not just, because I know how that felt. I think I wrote out like a script, and I was like, because it's easy to get caught up in, you have so much pressure, your heart's racing, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know who you're talking to, and it's like, okay, first impression, I want to get out what we do. This is what we do. This is what we can offer. And so I wrote out a bit of a script just on a piece of paper. Like Renee said, paper everywhere. And just consistency. So then I'd write a list and say, okay, I followed up with that person, then I emailed that person, and I would just have a bit literally written out on a piece of paper. I've emailed them, I've called them. They said call back on this time because this person would be back in there, and I would hold them accountable, and I would call back and say, and it got to the point where I guess a few of them could see what we could do and wanted to give me an opportunity, and I would always push for a meeting. All right, I'll be in there. I'm going to bring some coffees in. Let's sit down and have a chat. And that was probably more nerve-wracking, to be honest, because then you've got to get your salesman stitch on and all the eyes in the room are looking at you and you can't kind of stumble. But I think that's probably what changed it.
So what was the motivation for you then in terms of, facing those challenges that clearly, even though it sounds like it was a breeze for you, you've languaged that it was obviously challenging at times. So what was the motivation that kept you going through all of that?
I was all in. Like, this is like Renee said, I've always been 100% committed. Even chasing Renee down before she wanted to go out on a date with me, I was committed. I was like, that's the first time I met her, actually. This is a bit of a tangent, but first time I met her, I actually called my parents. I'm like, I met the girl that I'm going to marry. And I couldn't tell her that. It was only a week into it, but I
using you. You're going to be my wife.
might have scared her away, like I didn't tell her that. But I guess I was just confident in my ability, and I knew that I wanted it so bad, and I was going to do everything I possibly could to make it work. And even though there were setbacks along the way, but no was not going to be an answer, basically. And I was going to try.
We'd invested a lot of, our time, our money, made sacrifices as well. We knew that this wasn't going to come without some small sacrifices along the way. And time with the family. And that was all we feel like short-term pain for long-term.
You've got to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It will be worth it in the end. You've just got to keep going, basically.
I asked the question because in our experience, I'm even thinking only recently, Warwick, we have lots of people that really struggle to do the hard things, the things they don't want to do, and that they allow that to hold them back from whatever their version of success is. And I think it's really important to highlight that there's no such thing as an easy path to whatever your version of success looks like. And it's going to entail some stuff we don't like doing and having to push through those challenges to get where you are today. And this is still only the beginning of your ride. You've got a fair way to go to get to that version of success that you guys are looking for. So I think it's definitely worth pointing out. Otherwise, we tend to drift over these things pretty quickly in the podcast as we move on to the next question or the next topic. But that's a real cracker for people that are listening. You guys are only young. You are having an awesome version of success already, particularly only a few years into business, but it didn't come without a lot of hard work, including, may I be really provocative here and say, falling asleep at stoplights because you worked yourself to the bone, Rhys.
I didn't know if I wanted to tell anyone that, but yes, it was on a not a public road. It was a country road on a farm. All the rest of it. No, it was and that was all in. I was all in, and that's another reason why I'd sacrifice so much of personal life and sleep being one of them, because I was so dedicated to making it work. And absolutely, I learned a lot of things along the way. And and you guys have taught me a lot of different ways to do things. But I think that's kind of the biggest thing that got me through it, was just my commitment to it.
Rhys, where has this come from for you? Because I suspect some of our listeners might be hearing this and go, oh, well, it's all right for you. You were born like that, or, you obviously had money behind you or something. It's easy for us to dismiss other people's results and just say, well, it's easy for you because. What would you say to that?
I think work ethic is something that, and especially being a business owner and having staff and employees and stuff like that, you think about work ethic. I think for me, my biggest attribute probably was my work ethic, and whether that come from learned behaviours from my parents and seeing them work so hard and raised the right way, I guess you would say, with focusing on having a good work ethic, showing up, putting the time in. I think that's kind of what's really spearheaded the business and excelled the business the way that it has, is because, I guess I wasn't prepared to fail. Like I didn't really, look, if it didn't work, look, I could go work for someone else. Like it wasn't that big of a, you know what I mean? Like even if it didn't work and we put all this money into it and put all this time into it, at the end of the day, if it didn't work, I wasn't going to be without a job. Like I could go work for someone else. So kind of.
Yeah. And I think like in terms of hardships, my parents' business crashed after the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
And, I've seen them never be able to fully recover from that. So in terms of coming from money, we both didn't.
We did.
Come from money. And Rhys's parents, their relationship did break down after years in the business. So I guess for us, we use that as part of our motivation as well.
Yeah. The hardships, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, to trying to learn from that and, do things differently or, to what others have probably done previously. And there's a lot of fear in that too, though, right? And that's one thing we've definitely worked on with you guys, as for myself especially, is it was being so fear-driven of the what ifs and the uncontrollable things that you think that you control that may actually be out of your control, and not sweating the small stuff. But as you're getting into it, was a big part of it for sure.
You mentioned working with us and obviously we've said you guys are clients of ours. I am always fascinated to understand people's choice to come to us and work with us as coaches and mentors, because it's not easy to allow someone to scrutinize what you're doing and also to trust somebody else's advice. You guys didn't know us from a bar of soap, and to be honest, we've gotten to know you reasonably well, but it's just such a tiny snippet of who you are, and you guys have such a tiny idea of who we are. And I hope that continues to develop, and we are part of your journey for as long as possible. But what went through your minds, and I guess what were some of the leaps you had to make to go, yeah, let's let someone tell us how to do things?
I think for us, when we actually, I don't know if you guys remember, we had a chat before we actually came on board to coaching, and we felt like you were both so genuine and really like our type of people, I guess you would say. And we really loved you guys. But at the time when we were starting out and we felt overwhelmed and felt overwhelmed with how we were spending our money and those types of things, I guess for us, that was probably not the right choice in hindsight. But at the time, we thought, this isn't the right move for us right now. We're just going to wait. And then we came back not long after. It might have been 6 months or so, eight months, I think. Yeah. And, we were like, no, we really hope that we can still be part of the team.
Please take us in.
Cabin in hand. Please, can we join you?
Sail between the legs. Don't forget about it.
But what happened during that 6 months, guys, or 8 months, or whatever it was? Like, what changed?
We knew it was important. We always put so much value on it, and we were like, this is absolutely what we need to do. And because we wanted to make it work so much, that we wanted to do everything we possibly could for our own personal growth, but the business growth and the knowledge and everything like that, we put so much importance on that. But it was so overwhelming when you first start, right? And with the health issues and a newborn baby and all these different things, like it was just, there's too much on. Like there was just too much to do. But in reflection, it would have been so much more beneficial had we have started from our very first conversation, like looking back at it now, because
support from the beginning. And like, I think we look at coaching as like being held accountable and having those people that understand where you're coming from, but also, you know, encourage you to be reflective and just that sounding board in people in a like-minded community, because there was times where we were alone with our thought and, you know, we were trying to problem solve between the two of us, and, you know, Rhys has got his strengths and I've got my strength from my career, but there were you guys that could have been helping us and having all people to soundboard off and
just some guidance through the crazy time, right? It was full on when you try to start a startup business that we didn't buy it already established. We started with nothing. I still have the first $100 we ever made in a frame. But like, there was so much we learnt in that period of time, but you tend to learn a little bit of the wrong thing to do, right? Or you think you're doing the right thing, you know, but having those tools in place would have really helped us excel a lot quicker or a lot more structured around what we know now.
it would have been a little less stressful.
Definitely.
Yep. Makes sense.
Renee, with that balance of having your own career and thinking about your career as a teacher, my assumption about teachers is you have the opportunity in the lunchroom at lunchtime to vent and talk openly about your experiences together, and you get to support one another. And pretty typically, we don't see that in the trades unless you're part of some sort of community, of course, but generally it's a very internal process. Is that true? My assumptions around your experience in an outside career and as part of the trades?
I think I've gone up to the lunchroom once this whole year. But I understand what you're saying around, like, I'm surrounded constantly in my daily life around like-minded individuals, all having different areas of expertise. I'm in inclusion, so I work with students with disabilities and behaviours, and then so people, my colleagues can lean on me for guidance and support in that area. However, somebody might have a real strength in a different area of working with students, and so I can go and lean on them. I guess probably for Rhys, you know, he didn't have that support system around him to go and lean on until we joined Tradies in Business, the Tradiepreneur program.
Yeah. And then all I would talk about is business. But I swear, you get sucked into that. So much has happened during the day, and then you get home and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
I always talk about the business. I'm so sorry. How was your day? You know?
So, sorry, Nick, I wanted to jump on that thread, actually. Given that, Rhys, you've talked about how driven you are, and, you know, it's like, well, there's a goal. I'm going to achieve that, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. How do you manage the balancing of, you know, personal well-being, your relationship, being parents, and still pushing hard to achieve those goals?
It is a juggle. It is something that I work on every day. There's no yardstick and measurable thing there. It's changing every day, and being in such a seasonal business as well. You know, our workload increases. We just had a bit of a heat wave in Queensland just the other week, and the phone with smoke coming out of it, it was ringing that much, you know. So that is another element to juggle as well. But I think for me, I knew that there was going to be some sacrifices made in the first 12 months or so, you know, that it would get easier the longer that we were in it. It's something that being a father is extremely important to me. Being a husband is extremely important to me. Also having that support there for Renee as well with what she's going through. She's been at home all day with 2 kids. She'd hit a break, you know. It was very difficult to juggle. And I still have times where it's too much to juggle. The first thing that you kind of drop, though, is your personal, or for me, was my personal health, my sleep, gym. You know, we used to gym all the time, and then we had a business and kids, and we don't gym at all. But we have just put a gym in the garage. So with the thought of using it more. That's the plan.
Look at
Renee,
that because of the dust on it.
I actually wrote this down earlier because I feel like as partners, we make decisions either consciously or subconsciously to sacrifice a lot. It's a big responsibility to take the lion's share of parenting and run with it whilst the business is being established. Is this something that you guys had an agreement about or something that you both kind of fell into?
I would say a bit of both.
Yeah.
I think we're very open communicators. So we didn't have, let's write down kind of our responsibilities, but we do verbally communicate what we feel is important in each of our roles. And I think we've gotten more clear as the time's gone on as well. So, for me, last year was really difficult going back to work after having the two girls, and they were constantly sick. And when you're only back part-time, I felt a lot of pressure taking a lot of time off and having, a company that needs to be run by Rhys. So I feel like it was a big struggle, like it was a personal struggle for me last year.
Last year was probably the hardest year, I reckon, wasn't it?
Yeah. And, that's why we had really open communication around what do we need to change? Like something's got to give. And as you guys know, Rhys was so tired himself. And so we just had to learn to say no to certain things and what were we going to implement in terms of structurally, to make to make sure that we're both being looked after in our well-being space. But
Having that support and the admin too. So in that time, at the start of the year, we put on an admin member. So, and she's fantastic. And that was a massive thing. I guess you see it as an overhead, it's a cost, it's extra money that you've got to have in to cover the cost of it and all the rest of it. But what that brought was the ability for me to be there. And now then, if the kids are sick, I'm off, with the kids and working from home kind of thing. It's allowed that flexibility for Renee to be able to focus on her career and give it the attention that it needs, because that in itself is a full-time job, So that's been a massive change. And I think that's really helped us. And again, it was that communication side of things and understanding, everybody's side of it. This is how I'm feeling about the situation. This is how I am, but finding what works for both. And it's just about understanding the process and what you're going through and what I'm going through might be very different. But yeah, finding how it works.
Sadly, we see a lot of resentment in couples, not all the time. And quite frequently, it's sort of there bubbling away under the surface because they haven't had the opportunity for the open communication like you guys have. Where do you think that comes from for each of you? Because it's quite a big commitment to be open communicators through something like you have been through in the last 3 years.
I don't know if you know, I love to talk. So I have often been talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles. But I think our relationship was so strong before going into that. Our relationship was so strong before having kids. Well, we had such a great foundation before we added these other elements of stress and worry into our life that we always had great communication before that. So it wasn't a case of, okay, now we need to figure this out and this is what we need to do to get through it. We already had those tools in place and we were open and honest the whole way through. We were very clear about obviously going through, my parents' breakdown through the business, if it was related or not, and making sure that we weren't going to go down that path. We need to communicate. We need to make sure that everything is, said and respected and understanding everyone's opinion.
I was going to say, there's a little element of, trauma background there, lack of knowing what didn't work.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, what surprised you most about being business owners?
It's not easy. No, I think I probably underestimate like the backside of things. Hey, like when you start it, and Renee, you can probably touch on this more. Ryan always says, like when you start a business, it'd be good if there was like a
checklist,
cheat sheet,
a manual. We feel like
business for dummies, you know what I mean?
I just remember thinking, and I'm like a very detail oriented person. So I wanted to help Rhys. Like he has his strengths. He's such a good quality tradie and, a great client relations manager, I suppose. And, probably my strength is like the detail oriented side of things. So I had to do so much research. And I think this is where most of my fatigue came from around, you need ASIC, registration, and you need public liability insurance, and you need contracts for employees and terms and conditions, and you need to register for GST. I didn't know you needed to do that, and and you need workers' compensation, and I was just like, oh my goodness, and it just felt so overwhelming. And I think I was really surprised at every little detail that was involved in the background. And we often talk about if we could just join Tradiepreneur and a community at least sooner, or had coaches sooner, then those things wouldn't have felt so overwhelming because you ask those questions.
Yeah.
Whereas we were trying to do it on our own. And, like they say, it takes a village to raise like a child, but like our business is another child.
Yeah.
So we really needed that village around us, and we didn't have anyone. We don't have anyone that, our parents had businesses in very different times, a grocery store and a scrap metal company also ran them very differently to how we envisioned that we would ever run our business. And just different, like I said, different times. And we had no business like-minded friends, I would say, around us in the trade.
In the trade space, yeah.
So yeah, we really were trying to do it on our own. That was probably the hardest part.
It's crazy when you think about that. Like as a tradie, if you're going to do a task and you need a certain tool for the trade, you'll happily go to Trade Tools and spend a couple of grand, and you know what I mean? Like, I need to do that because I have to get it done right. But then why don't you invest in your business and get the things that you need to get and get the knowledge and experience to help you
solve things?
Yeah, it's definitely an aha moment for sure.
Love it. So if you could go back to just before you started the business, go back and talk to your slightly younger selves, because it's only a few years ago. What advice would you give yourselves just before you started the business, knowing what you know now?
Do you reckon?
I think looking at your support systems, not just thinking that you have to do it on your own, making sure you have the support systems in place before you start, because it quickly snowballed for us. Like we grew so rapidly once we started getting our clients, and then our first staff member, and then our second, it grew so rapidly that we felt like we were dropping balls or we were putting out spot fires. And that came at a cost to us being burnt out, stressed, overwhelmed. And so maybe if something was in place right from the early stages, then we wouldn't have had to go endure all of the burnout alone, and feeling alone in that space.
We would have had the right advice around that and how you navigate that time probably. It's I think that was the biggest thing is just the processes side of things. So there's so much more that you don't know. As a tradie, you're good with your hands, you're on the tools. For me, obviously I'd come from a management position, but prior to that, the last time I was on the computer was MSN, so trying to it might date me a little bit there. But trying to learn the processes and even just professional emails and how you structure a quote and what that looks like and all these different things. It's really about, and I'm very much a person, I've always been a really big process person and making sure the process correctly and detail orientated and stuff like that. And that would have saved so much headache, get the right advice straight away, do it the right way from the get-go, don't learn bad habits, and then try to fix it, basically.
Prevent rather than react.
Yeah.
Great advice. I've said a few times over the years, you can prevent it now or fix it later. And most people choose to fix stuff later, and that gets expensive and frustrating. Prevention's not very sexy. but it is a lot cheaper in the long run.
Definitely.
Great advice for yourselves, guys. What excites you most about the future now that you have put all this stuff in place? Obviously, you're part of the Tradiepreneur program. What excites you most about the future?
I think for me, I've still got a lot of goals and plans for the business and where we would kind of see it moving forward. I'm excited for the future because it is unknown. There's some positive things coming up next year. We've got some really big projects landing. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's another element of the business. So really looking forward to that. Looking forward to finding some more legends to join our team. We've got such a great crew, and continuing to maintain our awesome culture, and adding more staff to that. I'm really excited for that. I'm excited for the conference, actually. So that'll be looking forward to that.
And a good little plug.
Yeah. How about you, Renee?
I think, obviously I'm excited for the business to grow, but I'm also excited to use the business as, our little nest egg and leverage.
As the vessel to achieve what we want to achieve personally and long term and stuff like that. Looking forward to retiring as well, probably.
Guys. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you both. You have had a very rapid rise to your current level, and it's always a privilege to be a part of our clients' journeys. To be on the team, as I guess we talk about, is something that I know brings me a lot of fulfillment. I think I can speak for Coxie as well in that sense. So well done on seeking outside guidance. I suppose that can be a challenging thing to do, especially for blokes. And we're excited about conference, of course, but we're excited about what you guys do over the next few years. So thanks for being here, Rhys and Renee.
Yeah, Russ, Nick and was.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.